Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker, Chicagoland's #1 live charity poker experience. We have a special episode today with poker player and new author, Sara O'Connor. Say hi, Sara.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Yeah, exciting. We connected on Twitter.
Correct?
I guess I was just like fishing around on Twitter, and obviously most of what I find is poker-related items, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I saw that you had a book coming out, A New Queen's Guide to Poker, and I was like, cool, let's see if she's interested. And you like immediately responded back, which was awesome. Normally I get just ghosted, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I like keeping my inbox open to people because I have found some really fantastic friendships and relationships and connections like this in the poker industry. So DMs don't go crazy in there, folks, but they're open.
Nice. I find that poker really loves their Twitter. I feel like Twitter has like a super strong poker community, and there's tons going on there. And I always enjoy whenever I play tournaments and I'm looking for something to do for an incredibly long time. I find Twitter is like the one go-to because like you really can't go anywhere else on social media because then it's like videos and reels and TikToks, and then I'm like totally distracted and I fall into the really deep rabbit hole of those items. But I really enjoy Twitter in general for tournaments and just long sessions in general. That's just me, my 2 cents.
I've been very impressed with poker Twitter. Like, some people consider Twitter to be an absolute cesspool, and I don't fault them for that, but I find the niche community of poker Twitter to be, quite frankly, fantastic.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. All right, so Sara, tell us about who you are. How'd you get into poker? What are you doing? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So I am 38 years young, and I used to be an educator and attorney, but I have been an artist now full-time for 8 years, I believe.
Oh, wow.
One extra year for part-time when I was still doing the lawyer gig and was starting to transition into art. I dabbled a little bit in poker when I was in college for about a year. My boyfriend, now husband, and I would play with a group of about 15 to 25 guys, except for one tournament. I was always the only woman there, but it was always welcoming and inviting. And we'd play, I think it was $20 with a $5 bounty for knocking someone out of a tournament.
Nice.
But then during COVID, me and a group of friends that I met coincidentally online started playing poker just for pride for about every Friday, sometimes Mondays. And that's where I was really bit by the bug and dubbed the Poker Queen because I did pretty well there with my group of friends. And once COVID restrictions lifted, I said to myself, you know what? Why don't we muster up some courage and try it out for real?
Nice.
And I haven't looked back since. And this February will be 2 years playing now. And I have logged just about 1,000 hours and some change live play. And then I don't really keep track of how many hours I play online, but I certainly play more live than online.
Yeah, I think most of our listeners would probably fall into that category of. I've always been a big proponent of playing live versus online. I can barely focus when I'm in person at a casino or in a poker room, let alone you take me and just my computer in my room. I got 0% chance of paying attention. My attention span's not going to last that very long. But before you go any further, where are you located at? Because I know you're on the East Coast, or at least you're in East Coast time zone. Where are you?
I am in Richmond, Virginia, which is 2 hours from my nearest casino, MGM National Harbor.
Okay.
But as I'm speaking to you now, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, visiting my sister.
Oh, nice.
And here, the casino is only 15 minutes away, so I feel very spoiled.
Oh, nice. Which casino's close in Pittsburgh there?
Rivers Casino.
Oh,
It's the only
nice.
one that I'm aware of in the city, and I'm not sure. I should know this, but since Rivers is so close, I'm not sure what the nearest next casino is to
Right.
here.
Are you a Bravo fan, or do you go to like Poker Atlas? Where do you try to find your games at, or are you just old school Google it?
I usually just Google and show up,
Hmm.
but I do use Bravo now to see how busy a casino room is
Yeah.
because for whatever reason, and I think Pittsburgh doesn't do enough high hands, frankly, you would think that their poker room would be busier than it is. So I always like trying to go when there's at least three tables because the old man coffees in Pittsburgh are no joke, and I cannot battle them when there are seven old man coffees at the poker table. So I usually now wait until the afternoon to start playing.
Yeah, people underestimate how good the kind of the veterans are that are there, the daywalkers. When they're
Yes.
there, man, those guys don't mess around. I mean, they all know each other. I used to play many years ago. I'm in Illinois and just outside of Chicago, and the only games that you could play in like the early 2000s were 5-10 limit. They did not offer
Oops.
no limit hold'em in Illinois. None of the casinos had it, so there was no limit games. So I just started playing 5-10, and it was like either in college or post college. So like I didn't have a job yet. So it was like cool. I just go there like during the day. It was like 5 minutes from my parents' house where I was staying in the basement. I'm like, this is great. I'm gonna go there and play 5-10. It was fun. And but you do meet some characters like during the day, and they all know each other. And like once if you're not in the in crowd, like it's a really hard barrier to entry to like get accepted and like go in there, and they all have like they know what time the game starts, and they're all there waiting like seated at the table for like the dealer to show up. So like you can't even get in the game unless it's like dumb luck or one of them doesn't show up or something. um
Exactly.
it was wild, but poker has changed since then.
Yep. Yep. I find them to be pretty welcoming, pretty darn welcoming in Pittsburgh, but it's also nice for them, I think, to have some fresh blood. So,
Yeah, and that is one complaint I have about poker in general is that the regulars sometimes are not very kind to new players because we're
right.
aggravated by them playing too slow or not understanding what a straddle is or blah blah blah, bomb pots or whatever it is that the game is doing now. Which is kind of a double-edged sword because if we don't accept the newbies, like you got to think you're better than they are. So like we want worse players at the table. That sounds good.
Absolutely.
They're new, so they've got at least some money in their pocket, which they're willing to part with, which again seems like a bonus. So I think that's a good thing. It's nice. And you're like, well, they're so welcoming. They're like, yeah, but they want your money and they're out for blood, which I'm totally okay with. That's part of the game. But I enjoy that
Exactly.
better than the whole, kind of closed off and, they kind of run new players off. I equate it to like when you go into a dive bar and there's like the four regulars at the end of the bar and you come in with your friends to try to drink and they're like kind of mean and run you off. And it's like, I'm never going back there again. That place sucked. And it's really not. It's just the regulars that kind of ruin it for you.
Right.
So it's good. I'm glad you're not having that experience.
Yeah, I don't have that at Rivers. I don't have it at MGM National Harbor. People there, both the patrons, the dealers, the floor, I can only say good things.
Nice. Now you said you've logged, 1,000 hours since how long has that been counting for?
2 years now. I'm pretty
It's
sure.
pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that my stats are counting for the entire time I've been playing. I don't think I've logged it's either counting it for just this year or just total. I wish I knew which it was. So it's a minimum of about 1,000 plus.
Of live play. Now, do you typically play cash games or tournaments?
I almost exclusively play cash games. I play 1-3, um, predominantly 1-2 if that's all they have.
Sure.
But I shot take 2-5. I've also played 1-3-6 in Pittsburgh and 2-3 in Arizona.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I've gotten to dabble a little bit. What I didn't do in Arizona that they had available was matching stacks because I just didn't feel ready for that level of commitment. Sometimes I do really, really well in sun run, and I did not want someone matching my sun run
Yeah,
stack.
nice. Yeah, matching stacks can be difficult because then the game really doesn't play 1-3. Like it plays much bigger, and it's like a way to get players to come in and be like, oh, here's my $200 or $300 that I want to come and play for. But if it's match stack, like then you're kind of at a huge disadvantage, at least if the game's been going for a while. And again, some 1-3 games play bigger than others, and that's just the way it is, and you kind of get used to it and know kind of what lane to stay in. But the match stack 1-3s are always playing bigger.
Exactly. And it's not that I'm too scared or too intimidated by it, but I've just never read about it. I haven't talked with my coach about it. It just doesn't make sense to me to go into battle already knowing that you're at a knowing disadvantage.
That is a valid point. All right, cool. I'm still blown away that you've only been playing for like 2 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, like that's such a fast track to go from like never played before, like never, like you never played like 5 card draw with like your grandparents or something.
No. So my stepdad would get a group of his buddies together about once a week, if not once every 2 weeks, and they would play with pocket change. So I think everyone's starting stack was maybe $20, certainly no more than
Yeah.
$40. And I would watch these older men playing in my dining room. And, I was never really like, oh, Joel, that's my stepdad. Could I watch you play? It was just something that they did on their own. But I don't know what it was in college. And I think I might have played a little bit online for free too. I wish I had a better memory, but really it wasn't until college that I was like playing once a week. But certainly once COVID hit, it was a saving grace to play. And I think it behooved me to have all of that time playing for free without money at stake to really get into the groove and see how different players played and see what I was comfortable doing and not doing before money even entered the equation.
Yeah, I would say most people don't do that. And I
Right.
think your way is probably a significantly easier way to get started without, and especially if you take it seriously. And you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? Because a lot of times when people play free poker, like they just kind of goof off, and it's a lot of like,
Oh, absolutely. There's so
shoving
much
and
punching going on.
yeah, lots of punting. That's such a great way to explain it. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. It's so funny for me to hear stories on how people get into the game, and that's a unique one. I've not heard a COVID silver lining.
Yeah, right?
You know,
It's a COVID come up.
yeah, that's pretty awesome. All I hear are bad COVID stories, but this is a good COVID story, so that's good. I like it.
Yep.
So you go from zero to watching stepdad Joel play occasionally to playing in college, and then you played online with free stuff, and then kind of after COVID went from there. What possessed you at that point to go, you know what? I mean, obviously you've taken the game quite seriously, which is really awesome because 1,000 hours, like in general of anything, sounds like a significant amount of time. And I 100% have not played that much in the last 2 years. I've been playing for a long time. So, that's kind of wild to me. That just seems like a huge number, especially
Well,
when the
thank
casino's
you.
like 2 hours away.
Yeah. So, like, what
That's
I
dedication.
do, it honestly is, I try to do it once every 2 weeks. And what I'll do is I'll rent a room at a cheap motel and I'll just stay for 2 or 3 days and play my heart out. So
Right.
sometimes that can be problematic because if I'm not in the right mindset,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like you have to dial in, sister, because you're paying for a hotel, you're here to play, let's freaking go.
Right.
But I really treat it as, in some ways, it's almost now like a staycation because my the motel manager knows who I am.
Yeah.
He expects me. If it's been too long, he's like, "Where you been?" Some of the dealers at MGM National Harbor got a little feisty because I was playing in Pittsburgh a little bit too much when I was visiting my sister.
Nice.
So it's like a home away from home, really, for both of these casinos. And I really will grind. Like, some people will go to the casino because they live close and will only play, and I put only in quotes because there's no time limit for how long or how short you play. But some people will only play for 2 or 3 hours, and I will be there, I kid you not, from 10 in the morning until 11 at night. I am just there grinding, living my best life.
Nice. Yeah, that's dedication. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the idea of like a poker vacation, which is fun. And I think a lot of people do that, at least a lot during the summer. A lot of people I know that play, kind of on a weekly basis. And obviously, there's a lot more stuff here in Chicago. I mean, there's tons more rooms and charity poker and all kinds of things to play in here. Where we'll get a lot of regulars that'll play 2 to 3 times a month. Which I would say is like the average, right? Like they'll come to 2 to 3 tournaments, and then they might do a little bit of both cash game and tournaments, or if you get busted in the tournament, play a cash game, or vice versa. And we do kind of take that for granted and forget about people that are like, oh, you don't have just gobs of different rooms to go play in. It's like
Right.
like Texas now has so many rooms. Have you been down to Texas to play any of those games yet?
No,
Oh,
I
boy.
am preparing myself for it.
It's a blast.
Yeah, Texas is on my bucket list for sure. Like, some people do the
wild.
WSOP main event for their bucket list,
Yeah.
and like, that's sort of on my list, but I'm not
Sure.
diehard about
It's
it.
on everybody's list. How realistically or how desirable it is. Like, it's on my list too, but I'm like, meh, I don't know. It's 10 grand. Like, that seems like a lot of money. Like,
Exactly. But
it would be
Texas
cool.
is for sure.
It would be cool. And obviously everybody looks at the end figure like, oh, I could win 12 million. That I could do a lot with that. But also it's like the landmines of just poker in general is just like for that tournament. I mean, it's wild,
Right.
like you got to dodge so long. I mean, anyways, we'll get to that, or we might not get to that, but you know what I mean? It's wild. But
Yes, I do.
Texas,
Right.
whew, the cash games in Texas, man, when they say everything's bigger in Texas, good golly, they're not lying, because the cash games in Texas, I've played in Houston and Austin, more in Houston than Austin, and it is just, man, those guys love to fire. Everybody fires down there.
Yeah, I interviewed Casey Lynn Mills for 2 of my books, and she just sang Texas's praises, but she also said, stay away, because I guess people who come to Texas will dilute the pool and will not expect Texas to go as hard as Texans want to go.
Right.
So for any listeners, like, if you're thinking about Texas, buckle up.
Yeah, it's a wild. It's the Wild West. It's great, which is kind of super fun too. Plus, I feel like it's the home of poker, so like I think it's neat in general to kind of play in some of those games, and it's a very different vibe in like the poker clubs down there.
Yeah,
but it's super cool. So tell us. I was trying to allude to this earlier. You go from not playing to becoming a poker author. Tell me how that happened, and then tell me a little bit about the book, and give us a little rundown.
Yeah, so the book started this January. And so to have it out so fast is really a marvel. Shouts to my editor, Shayna Schwartz, for helping me and for giving me the courage to go forward with it. Really, what it stemmed from is I had purchased an online course. I won't shout it out because I no longer am doing that course.
Okay.
Because I was just so frustrated by it, because I'm a smart girl. I graduated 3rd from my law school class.
Nice.
I know how to study. I know how to do things. And I was frustrated because they were talking just above my level. So the lessons weren't sinking in. And I was just getting so frustrated because I would read these books, absorb these poker books, love them to death, but I wanted more and thought that I would get more from these online courses. But because there was that language barrier, I just couldn't, it just wasn't good enough for me. It wasn't sinking in. And so I just started writing and thinking, well, where's my hole? How do I plug it? What do I think I understand? Do I really understand it? What don't I understand and really need to understand? What are some of these courses talking about that I'm not understanding and need to understand if I want to up my game? And because I'm an artist, I will send out like email newsletters occasionally, but I hadn't gotten to stretch the writing wings that I had as an attorney for the longest time. And words just flowed from me. It was the easiest thing in the world. I felt like frankly a savant how fast this thing poured from me. And so it was to help beginners like me access more expertise without feeling like a dummy or to feel like I don't even understand what my teacher is trying to talk to me about right now. It's to like bridge that gap between I'm playing with my friends for $20. Now I'm ready to go to a casino, but I don't know how to for 300, 500, $1,000.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the genesis. And so really this book is not just an introduction to poker book, but it's also an introduction to the casino environment book. Um, I'm the first, if not maybe there's a small handful of other authors who have also interviewed dealers for my book. I interviewed floor people for
Oh.
my book. I interviewed professional players for my book because there's stuff that they know from their experiences that I just haven't tapped into yet. So there's this wealth of knowledge that's not just me preaching to the choir. It's dealers sharing their experiences. It's floor people explaining what's happening. It's professional players who are giving advice to new players. So it's not just coming just from me. And then one of the other things that I do in the book is I talk about player types. And I don't necessarily mean just the shark, the fish, the donkey.
I'm
I'm
reading it right
talking
now, and I am frankly floored by some of these, and I'm trying to figure out which one I am, but I'm going to let you keep going. So go ahead. It's when you say you like, there is literally 28 different types of players, which is fucking fantastic.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
more
it.
of like the cast of characters that you're
Oh,
going to meet
yes.
at the poker table instead of necessarily just on how to strategically beat your player, but also I want people, and not just women, but especially women who are entering a male dominated sphere, to recognize these are the types of people you're going to be running across. If someone is aggressive to you or is sexist to you, and that happens occasionally, but it's the exception, not the rule. This is what you're likely to encounter. So you're prepared for it so that you can focus on the game and focus on having fun. And so that you recognize it's not about you, it's about this type of person that you're running across.
Yeah. I mean, geez, there's so many good ones here. The flirt. I like the flirt.
What
I
are
don't think
some of the
you might be
favorites
the
that you're
only.
seeing?
You might be the only poker author who's ever called another poker player the flirt, but I think it works for you. I think if I wrote a book and I called someone the flirt, it would come off as weird. There's the stoner. I
Yeah.
like that one.
Yep.
The crybaby. God, we all know a crybaby. I'm thinking of a particular crybaby right now is 1,000% listening, but he's a sweetheart, but he's a crybaby. The co-conspirator. What's that one?
So the co-conspirator is someone who loves showing you their hand.
Oh, that's
They
hilarious.
love having you sweat. They love sharing secrets with you. They'll even sometimes whisper in my ear. I don't know if it's because I'm an approachable woman,
Maybe.
or if they'll do it with a gentleman as
Or it's
well.
just a new
But they
audience, right? Like it's just a new audience, and they're fully on board with this co-conspirator.
exactly.
That's hilarious.
They love sharing their
the
secrets.
last one is the unwell. Which one's the unwell?
So the unwell, I break down into, I think, 3 or 4 different
Oh, four. Yeah,
subcategories
yeah,
of
yeah. I see that
people.
now.
Yeah, so one of them is the vampire, and the vampire never leaves the casino. They truly need sleep. They don't know how to leave. Another one of the unwell is frankly the addicted.
Yep.
Another thing that I haven't seen poker players or poker authors rather do is talk about the well-known secret of addiction. I want my readers going into poker with their eyes wide open, not just so that they themselves don't become addicted, but so that if they're uncomfortable by playing with someone who they think that they're addicted, you know that you can leave that table, at least when it comes to cash games, and move, because you will be playing against some people who just simply can't let go of their cards and will punt money, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, but it is something that absolutely exists in the poker room.
Yeah, we can all think of a time where that has happened.
Yep.
And then there's the tilted in the unwell, which kind of goes. That one's a little bit easier to know what it is.
It is, but you know what? As someone who sometimes gets winter tilt, even though I'm so young, one of the things that I learned is tilt isn't necessarily when you're angry or you're a crybaby. It's when you think that the world is your oyster ready to crack open. So there's several different types of tilt. I think some professional poker player, I can't remember who, said that there was like 6 different types of tilt.
Oh,
Not just 2 kinds of tilt. Yeah, I can't remember what the whole breakdown was, but tilt doesn't necessarily mean that you're at the lowest of the lows. I've certainly experienced tilt when I've been at the highest of my highs.
nice. Yeah, this is great. Ooh, what's the envious?
The envious is someone who won't stop talking about my chip stack. They are
Oh,
always wanting what is in front of me and are so obsessed with what they perceive as someone else's chip stack or their worth, that they're constantly saying they're the players who are constantly saying, oh, the river always hits for them, or my 2 pair always gets cracked, or my aces always get cracked. Like everyone else at the poker table is always having a better time than the envious player. Always.
that's hilarious. Yeah, this is interesting. This is such a, and again,
Oh,
I
sorry.
don't. That's okay. You can bark all you like. Um, yeah, I find it so interesting that you have such a breakdown of like the different types of players because not a lot of people think of it that way. They might just think of like one or two. Although when you read them, they start to make sense, and it's super. I mean, it's like you said. As soon as you said what the envious was, I was like, oh yeah, I can think of somebody who's like that, or I've been in games where these things happen. And then do you go into like each like once you kind of go over the different types of players, like tips and tricks and things to look at, or
Yes,
like for
I
each
try
particular
to,
type?
for each player type, have at least one tip for how to either play better against someone or play smarter against someone. Because sometimes you will just know it in your bones that someone is outplaying you and you are outmatched. And you have to be ready to play either up to their level or still at your level while making sure that you're not making mistakes, unless you want to just completely leave the table if you're playing a cash game and move to another table. So for everyone, I try to like identify who the person is and then break down how to break them down.
Nice. That's good. Now you said that so that's book number one, which
Yes.
I like, and I think it's also again, and I'm just reading from kind of skimming while trying to listen at the same time, which I'm frankly not very good at. Um, it's also kind of nice for tournament players who are looking to get into cash. I feel like this might be something that they're looking for as well.
Yes.
But you
A
said
very, very good book
yeah.
for tournament players who have no idea or little idea on how to transition to cash games. Because I mentioned tournaments in passing, but this is really a cash
Game.
game tutorial book.
I mean, I should have known better. It is in the title, A New Queen's Guide to Poker, The Art of Playing Cash Games Like a Pro for Beginning and Intermediate Players. So, like I said, I'm skimming and reading, but not great. Ooh, The Maniac. I'm trying to figure out which one I am, and I kind of find myself in many of these things. Feel like...
Well, Alex Fitzgerald, whose books I really like, will say that sometimes you transition. You're not always the station. You're not always the maniac. You're not always the nit. And frankly, when you play against stations, maniacs, and nits, you're going to want to vary your play level to beat those players. Not like, as you already know, Ken, not every player gets treated the same way when you're playing. You have to be adaptable.
True. I'm not very good at that either, but I do know that's what you're supposed to do.
In theory, anyway. In theory.
Yeah, that's part of the game theory that I'm okay with thinking about. The other game theory stuff, I'm not so much into. It's funny when you were saying how, like, when experts and people teaching, they start talking about these different things, and I'm just like, God, I am not interested in playing in that game. And I'm not poo-pooing like game theory and charts and what you should and shouldn't be doing. I just, for me, for what I enjoy the game for, I like this type of style that you're talking about, where we're discussing different types of players and kind of ways to play, in and against them and things of that nature. I enjoy better than, say, here's a chart that shows all of them, and if you're under the gun and you have this chip stack, just to me, that's not interesting at all.
Yeah, I don't play like a robot. I play very naturally.
I like natural playing. It's much better. So you wrote book number 1. It is out on Amazon. We will include links in the show notes, as well as to your Twitter or X profile. Although when I say X profile, it seems Twitter. So much weirder.
I say Twitter.
Yeah, it's going to be like, I'm in Chicago, and the Sears Tower is no longer the Sears Tower. It's now called Willis Tower, right? Because Sears doesn't exist anymore, and whomever owns the most corporate real estate within the building gets to name the building. Now, I have no idea what Willis does, but apparently it's enough to own or rent enough of Willis Tower to name the tower Willis Tower. But it's funny. You stick with calling it just the Sears Tower, which I find incredibly funny, and it takes like some generations to get people to do. I'm sure my grandchildren will never have any idea what the Sears Tower is, but it's just one of those things that it takes time to kind of get used to it and change the way you think about stuff. So maybe in 5 years or 5 generations, everybody's gonna be like, "You play natural poker? That's crazy. You're supposed to do this with ace 6 off, but ace 5, that's different." I'm like, fuck, I don't really play either of those. Maybe I should change it up.
Right.
Tell me about you. You had mentioned before we got on that you are currently writing or releasing 2 new books.
Currently editing right now 2 other books.
Nice.
So one of them is called Behind the Blinds: Interviewing Poker Professionals.
Very cool.
And so for a New Queen's Guide, I took the Q&As that were designed to help new players and included them in a New Queen's Guide. But the full interview of these players like Brad Owen, Maria Ho, I was very, very, very fortunate with the multitude of professional players who were willing to speak with me. I think I have 23 different individuals who I've interviewed for this full book, Behind the Blinds. And then I had such fun interviewing poker professionals and such fun interviewing the dealers that I thought, you know what? I have not seen a dealer tell-all book.
Ugh.
And so I have a dealer tell-all book that is currently in front of beta test readers right now that's called Shuffle Up and Deal With It. And each chapter is for an individual dealer literally across the world to explain some of the highs, the lows.
Oh, my Lord.
what they go through, what they get paid, what their experiences are, some of the drama that happens, some of the crazy stories that happen. Some get very personal and deep. It's not just a doom and gloom book. It's not just a sunny, clear skies
Sure.
book. It really tells the multitude from these dealers' mouths. I changed the interviews and turned them into narrative stories that each dealer got to approve.
Oh,
And some of the dealers are anonymous. Some of them go by their names. Some of them go by aliases. But again, I was very, very fortunate to have these dealers welcome me into their experiences. And each dealer is about 3 to 8 pages long, at least on a Word document, for their stories. And I think there's about 34 or 38 stories. I could be wrong about that, but it's a substantial book. I think it's even longer than A New Queen's Guide.
yeah, that's wild because I always think of poker dealers in general when you. It's like if you've never been a bartender, then you can't understand because it's probably something we've all experienced, in general, even more so than say poker. If you, how many times you go to a restaurant, there's a bartender, you know them, you see them, they say hello, they're very nice, they make you drinks, it's wonderful, you have a good time, you have a little one night kind of experience with them, and then you never see them again, and it is what it is.
Right.
But to kind of get the idea of the bartender side or the poker dealer side, or even it's just something in a service industry where tips are so important and you're dealing with kind of, and really bartender kind of is a good way because you're kind of dealing at people where there's a lot of emotional things going on. I mean, anytime you get gambling and money involved, people have some pretty highs and some lows. I mean, I've seen some people say some absolutely awful stuff to dealers. I've always been a fan of I never blame the dealer. It is what it is. I blame the game. It's just part of the game. I mean, people are always surprised when they're 80-20 to win and they lose. I'm like, yeah, you lose 1 out of 5 times there. Like, you do realize, like, every bad beat story at the end, I'm like, yeah, and I was like 70-30. I'm like, that's even worse, man. Like, that's even more than 1 out of 5. Like, 1 out of 5 doesn't sound that bad. Like, it's kind of a lot. So I don't know. I think that's super, super interesting. When can we expect those to kind of drop? What do authors have when they say drop? Because like music albums drop.
Release, drop. Yeah, let that beat drop.
Yeah.
I hope within the next few months. I want to give A New Queen's Guide a little bit of room to breathe.
For sure.
But I'm hoping by June at least one of those books will drop, if not sooner.
Well,
and
June's
then,
a good time. That's right before the World Series. Like, that's a good meaty time for poker players. That's like the poker player, pinnacle. It's when everything kind of comes together. So that might be kind of fun.
Yeah,
and then good too.
Yeah. So probably both of them released sometime next year with breathing room for each of them. I don't know which one's going to come out first, even though the poker interview book isn't yet before beta readers. I still have 1 or 2 interviews that I'm wrapping up actually as we speak while I edit the ones that are complete. But it's very, very exciting to get to tell other people's stories, to kind of be a vessel for them.
Yeah, I enjoy that. I think it's neat, and I really like. It blows me away that you're so new to the game, and yet here you are on book number 3. And to me, they're very interesting ideas of books. I always find poker books in general, I'm not too terribly interested in reading because it's not really a new perspective. It's just like the same stuff. Like, I don't know. I mean,
no, I agree.
Right.
I agree completely. When I was talking with my
like,
editor,
these are
I
interesting.
said,
I'm excited to hear what dealers have to say, and just like to me that right there is like a must read for me, because I'm very interested in both sides, because it's like, I hate to say the dark side of poker, but it a little bit is like they're kind of the beaten servants at the table, and we 100% every poker player at some point has taken the dealer for granted, and it is what it is, and it's just part of the game at times, but we can do it in a gracious way. So that's interesting, and everybody likes to hear from the pros. So that's always kind of fun, but I'm very interested in hearing what the dealers have to say in general, especially if they're anonymous. Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think dealers have deserved a platform for a very, very, very long time. And I will say to your listeners, I was both shocked and not shocked when dealers shared what mattered the most to them.
Oh, really?
It was not the dollar amount of a tip, although that certainly went far for some people. What really stood out to dealers were personal compliments. That's what made them smile. That's what made them shine. That's what they said in response to the question, what made you feel best at the poker table? When someone would compliment someone on their pitch, it would make them so freaking happy. There are like, I just think, as you said, beaten servants, and it goes so far to just be kind to a dealer at least once a down, and it truly doesn't have to cost you a single chip.
Yeah, and I mean, free compliments are always nice. I think a lot of people in general, kindness doesn't really cost anything, and I get it. We've all had moments where we're aggravated or pissed off, and it could be about anything, and then we're less likely to be, kind of the person who's bringing us our coffee or that drink at the bar or dealing all of those cards. Granted, you did lose with them, but you know what? We never remember the times that we won when it's like they don't get credit always for that part. So it is kind of nice to get that. So, hey, next time you're out playing, make sure not you in general, I meant just like the listeners. This was like a general PSA. I didn't want you to think I was yelling at you or the people listening.
No.
Neither one. I'm not yelling at anybody. But I think that's great. Like, compliment somebody on just their dealing. Hey, man, you're a really good dealer, or you've got a really nice pitch, or I enjoyed the way you handled, that tomfoolery that was going on earlier. Because it is hard. The one complaint I always have about dealers is that, if like two people are speaking, a different language at the table, and if they're in the hand or not, the dealer's the first line of defense, be like, hey guys, it's supposed to be English only, whatever the rules are.
Exactly.
And it's always nice to do so.
I always say thank you for enforcing
Correct,
the rules.
because
always.
It's a rough spot to put them in. It's like, again, one of the huge negative things that they have to like police people and then ask them to be gratuitous as well. And again, it's a nice, like you said, it's a nice way to do it without, it really doesn't cost you anything. Well, Sara, thank you so much for being on the show and telling us about your book and your experience in poker. And like I said, you can find Sara's book on Amazon. And you can get it in paperback or Kindle, whichever you prefer. And then she's going to have 2 new books coming out, which will be super cool as well. Maybe we can talk about those again next summer, or is it summer? This summer?
We'll find out. Honestly, the writing process has gone so much faster than I would have expected it to go. So we'll just stay tuned, because I will be back to talk with you about them, Ken.
Nice. We are a Amazon Hot News. I'll try that again. Amazon Hot New Releases. Number 1 in poker.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I'm always in awe of authors in general and people who put out the written word in general. So that's why when I had kind of saw you on Twitter, I'm like, this is somebody I hope that we can get on the show and have fun with. And I do enjoy you being here and taking your time to talk to me. So thank you so much. And yeah, anything you want to finish on, like a cool saying, or do you ever win a pot and have like a cool one-liner? Does that ever happen?
Well, so like my name is Sara O'Connor, so I'll get Terminator jokes all the time.
Yeah, I didn't want to make that, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess in light of 2 new books coming out soon, I'll be back.
I knew you were going to say it, and it's great.
But in the meantime, run good, Have fun. Keep listening to Ken, and I'll see you on the flip side, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll see all of you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.